Welcome back. It's crunch time in Tallahassee as the legislative session is moving along with only a few weeks left. Joining us now to talk about this and the latest in Tallahassee and much more is Lieutenant Governor Jeanette Nuñez. Lieutenant Governor, thank you for coming in.
Thank you, Jim. It's great being here.
So, always a pleasure to have you on the show. So, I want to start with news of the day. We're taping this on Thursday afternoon, and just a few minutes ago, Broward Circuit Court Judge David Hames issued a ruling dismissing Scott Israel's lawsuit. Scott Israel was claiming that the governor did not have the authority to remove him as sheriff. The judge says no, that's within his purview. He wasn't ruling on the merits of the case, but said the governor did act within his authority. What was your reaction?
Well, absolutely. I think we all knew that that was going to be the outcome. Certainly the governor acted within his authority. And I think that the next step in the process, obviously the Senate will take it up. And I'm confident that the Senate will look at the case, they'll look at the merits, and they will agree with the governor and agree with the Parkland families. And so we're confident that at the end of the day, Sheriff Toney, who's doing a great job for the citizens of Broward County, is going to continue to do a great job. And so we're confident that the outcome will be the same.
All right. So let's move on. I want to talk about some of the issues in Tallahassee, and there's one issue that appears at this point to be dead. It's been tried 4 years in a row. It's the firefighter cancer bill. It's a bill that would expand coverage for firefighters who contract certain types of cancer. As I'm sure you know, firefighters are far more likely to contract cancer and to die from cancer than average people in the state of Florida. Why is this bill not moving forward?
Well, as you know, the legislative process is a challenging one, and so a very small percentage of bills actually make it out of the session in the 60 days that they're allotted. Certainly, we understand the challenges that our first responders have with regards to contracting certain types of cancer. Back in my time in the legislature, I worked with the committee to get much-needed funding to research the causes and some of the techniques to be able to really make headway in that regard. But at the end of the day, the process is what the process is. And so I think that obviously this year it doesn't look like it has a good chance of success, but I have no doubt that it'll be an issue that we'll continue to hear about.
So let's talk about the process for a second. And folks at home, their eyes usually glaze over when we talk about the process in Tallahassee. But what we should note is that in the Senate, overwhelming support, they pass it through. They've had no problem with this bill. Mm-hmm. In the House, there are 120 members in the House. 81 members in the House are co-sponsors of the bill. Mm-hmm. The person who opposes it is the Speaker of the House, Jose Oliva, here from Miami-Dade County. Mm-hmm. Because he opposes it, even though 81 members of the House have signed on as co-sponsors, that bill is dead. Is that really a fair system?
Well, what I can tell you is that the Speaker has released a statement with regards to his thoughts on the issue. He thinks it's an issue that should be dealt with locally. Obviously, he is the Speaker of the House. He has a tremendous influence over the process, but I think that he has been thoughtful in his deliberations. Now, whether or not we agree with it, I think obviously some members have signed on as co-sponsors, but I think it's important to note that at the end of the day, in the executive branch, both the governor and myself, we're being respectful of the process. We understand the separation of powers, and so we're confident that the process, whatever yields this session, I think that we'll continue to work with our legislative leaders to really make sure that we're addressing issues that are important to all Floridians. Obviously, we care deeply about our first responders, and so we hope that at the end of the day we'll be able to continue working with them, and maybe next year there'll be an opportunity to address this in a different manner.
So does the governor and does the governor's office have no position on this bill?
The governor's office hasn't given a position on this bill and many other bills for that matter.
But if this was a priority for the governor, if the governor had gotten behind it, wouldn't that add more emphasis to it and help it to pass?
Well, certainly the governor has a number of priorities, many of which have been making their way through, some of which have not, quite frankly. And so the fact that the governor supports or doesn't support a bill doesn't necessarily guarantee its success.
All right. Let's move on to a couple other issues. One of the hot issues in Tallahassee, which again was being heard this week but was tabled briefly and it may come up again, is the issue of arming teachers. Where do you come down? Where does the governor come down on the idea of expanding the Guardian program, which would allow for more guns in schools?
Well, if you look at the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas Public Safety Commission that was chaired by Sheriff Gualtieri, I had a conversation with many of the people on that particular commission, and many of them were opposed initially at the thought of arming teachers. And we understand that's obviously an issue that's very controversial. We understand that there are certain districts that do not feel comfortable doing that. But when I spoke to people on the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas Commission, they said that after much research, after looking at footage, not just here in Florida, but throughout the country, mass shootings, really oftentimes the only line of defense is arming teachers. So that's a topic that we'll, I believe, continue to hear about. I know many people have very strong positions on it, but I believe that the governor feels that whatever we can do, whatever opportunities exist to be able to prevent another tragedy like Parkland, he's amenable to doing so.
I want to turn to health care. This was one of the priorities. We were speaking about Speaker Oliva before. He made health care and sort of deregulating some of the hospital process a priority. There are two bills, one in the Senate, one in the House. Speaker Oliva is more extreme in his view of trying to do away with certificates of need. He believes, we had him on this show a few weeks ago, he believes that the way to bring down healthcare costs is through more competition and allow more hospitals to come into the marketplace. That requiring a certificate of need is a bad idea. The Senate has a different version of the bill. Does the governor's office have a preference between the Senate bill or the House bill?
Well, again, I think the governor has been very respectful of the process. He supports the concept of deregulation in healthcare. He supports being able to drive down costs by eliminating some of those barriers to market. At the end of the day, we'll take a look at which bill passes to look at it and to see which one we would support. But I think he's very amenable to looking at either version.
Well, this is an area that you have some expertise in. You used to lobby on behalf of Jackson, correct?
Well, I worked for Jackson.
Worked for Jackson. I mean, what government affairs type things. Yes. Jackson, for instance, opposes the House bill, supports the Senate bill. Mm-hmm. Can you understand why Jackson would be opposed to some of the deregulation efforts made by the Speaker and the House side of it? And do you think that, give me your thoughts, because this is an area of expertise for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I haven't talked to the folks at Jackson or any other hospital system for that matter in terms of their viewpoints on either bill. What I will say is that oftentimes what we see as the increase in costs, it stems from a lot of places. It's not just regulatory issues, but that is a big component of it. And you've seen other states that have passed similar laws. And for the record, I supported it when I was in the House. When you see other states pass similar laws, you've seen additional entries into the market. You've seen competition that obviously spurs quality and spurs cost. And so I think that there are a lot of aspects to containing costs. One of the issues, as you well know, is the drug importation bill that the governor is supportive of, and looking at ways of bringing down the cost of pharmaceuticals, because that is a huge problem in our community. Oftentimes seniors have to choose between paying for their medicine or paying their rent, and that's something that we really are looking at.
I want to give you a chance to respond to something too. In the budget, there was a new provision in the budget which would allow you, the Lieutenant Governor, to have an office here in Miami-Dade County. Mm-hmm. The governor has an office space at FIU. Does he not allow you to use it? Why do we need a separate office for the Lieutenant Governor in Miami-Dade County? And do you have any idea how much it would cost?
This isn't about me, per se. This is about the ability to represent the governor on behalf of all Floridians. And so having an office at FIU, which we currently have, being able to incorporate a headquarters for myself there, I think is very beneficial to Floridians. As you know, South Florida.
Will he not give you the key to the office?
Of course he will.
Okay. So why do we need an additional office space for it?
Well, we won't need an additional office space. And so I want to be clear, it's not an additional cost to the taxpayers. It's just allowing me the opportunity to work officially out of there, to be able to represent the governor, not just here in South Florida, but obviously we've been very active. This week alone, I'll have visited 6 different counties in the state of Florida. So this governor's made it very clear that he wants me to be active. He's given me official duties as part of my responsibilities as Lieutenant Governor. And so I'm really trying to have an established presence, not just here, but throughout the state.
I want to ask you about your duties as Lieutenant Governor. Are you enjoying it?
Absolutely. I'm having a great time. We've been very busy. The governor has tasked me with a couple of important areas, key for the state. healthcare being one of them, and also the space industry through Space Florida, chairing that entity. I'm also have been appointed to the Human Trafficking Council that's chaired by the Attorney General. That's an area that's I'm very passionate about, and we really hope to make a lot of inroads.
Well, one question I want to ask, the only reason why I ask how you're liking being Lieutenant Governor is because I know that you, before were selected for Lieutenant Governor, you had opened a campaign account to run for the state Senate, the seat that will be vacated in 2020 by Anna Terry Flores. That campaign account is still open. Are you still leaving open the possibility of running for the state Senate in 2020?
No, not at all. And if you look at the account, you see it's been dormant since the time the governor, then candidate, selected me to be his running mate. And so I'm in the process of closing that down. I'm fully committed to being the lieutenant governor for the next 4, potentially 8 years.
Okay. You talked a little bit about Space Force. I want you to elaborate a little bit more. When the president recently was talking about expanding a Space Force, you know, sort of like creating a more of a sixth branch of the military almost for space. The governor's idea, and I guess what you're tasked with, is trying to make sure it's headquartered here in Florida. Is that correct?
Absolutely. We have a unique opportunity in Florida to headquarter the Space Combatant Command at the Cape, and so that's something that the governor has put an official request to the president. I was in Washington last week talking to our federal partners, both Senators Rubio and Senator Scott, along with our congressional partners, and we feel that we are uniquely positioned to have that headquartered right here in Florida, and it will be a tremendous boon to the state, not just from the standpoint of readiness and being able to collaborate with our other centralized commands, but also in terms of the economic benefit to Floridians.
Madam Lieutenant Governor, always a pleasure having you on. Sorry to give you like a lightning round here. Come back and we'll do more.
Absolutely.
All right,
Thank
I
you.
appreciate it. We'll be right back after the break.